Neal Collins is our regular soccer analyst and joins us now on Newsnight. Neal, a very good evening to you. First of all, what is your sense? Is Safa bankrupt? Is it telling the truth when it says it actually is in a cash positive position?
They've got 2.3 million in their bank account, but they've got a wage bill of 17.1 million, which means they're in a little bit of trouble.
Well, if it continues that way, the experts would say it's technically bankrupt then.
I think technically it is. And ABSA, the big sponsors, ABSA and Castle, are both backtracking and cutting their investment. There's been other people have run over the hills. Their kit sponsor has gone, I'm told. There's some dispute over that. So we're in a situation where you've got, having had a World Cup here, great successful World Cup, and an African Cup of Nations, which went the most ticket sales ever of an African Cup of Nations. We have a South African Football Association in debt. 92 million in debt is the theoretical figure, and they lost 54.4 in the last financial year.
Right, you're going to tell us in just a moment that there's a king's ransom as far as development money is concerned from
Yes.
the FIFA legacy, from the FIFA legacy. But to the best of your knowledge, in spite of the denials, was development money used for any other purposes? Allegations about this fleet of Mercedes-Benzes.
There's two sums. One sum was a surplus from the World Cup, which amounted to about 54 million rand after the World Cup, that Safa were allowed to get their hands on. They did buy a group of Mercedes-Benz. They did build the Safa house with some of the FIFA Legacy Fund, and they did buy a whole lot of buses that seem to be collecting dust. They've tried to justify those decisions, and I speak to Kirsten Nemetandani Friday night. He phoned me. He's a lovely bloke. I don't think he's that bad. But there are people underneath Kirsten of great power in Safa who are intent on bribing the 52 regions of Safa before the September elections to make sure that they take power in September. Those people are the shady people who seem to get through money quite quickly. Like 112 million in the last financial year is a lot of rands.
Why does Safa need a fleet of Mercedes-Benzes?
They don't. They're saying that they need it because they have to send people out to the outlying areas, and Mercedes are involved with them, so they thought they'd buy Mercedes rather than Fiat or Citroen, like real people drive. So we're looking at a situation where Safa are profligate with their money, Safa are corrupt, Safa are absolutely spending money like water. And to have a national football body that was late in their payments to Bafana during AFCON, after the Malawi friendly, we know that players weren't paid until just after they beat Angola in the vital game, and I think that money came from central government, but I've still got to establish that.
So we have this butting of heads now with SASCOC. Is SASCOC right then in calling on government to implement a full and thorough probe?
Yeah, I'm never one to support SASCOC. I think that SASCOC are normally a thorn in the side of very well-run sports organisations, and I've yet to meet anyone in sport that likes SASCOC in this country, which is quite sad. But SASCOC are right to call into question Safa's accounts. I have here...
Now this, you have another document here. This is about the development money that is available.
It is. This was the one that we actually called the FIFA World Cup Legacy Trust. Sepp Blatter gave $100 million to South Africa to rebuild football after the World Cup and to make sure the World Cup was a benefit to the ordinary lads that play football in the street and that want a plastic pitch or a synthetic surface. According to these figures given to me by a high-ranking Safa official who's very worried about the future of this money, there's 400.
You can vouch for the authenticity and the
Yes.
bona fides of that document.
Absolutely, I've got a few documents here, but let's just go on this one. 472,513,704 rand as of October 2012.
So close to £500 million rand.
I'm told, and this is where I get a bit sticky because I don't sit in these meetings. I know that all football associations can be dodgy. I've seen it happen in countries all around the world. This 472 million rand, nearly £500 million rand, Safa are desperate to get their hands on it because otherwise they're bankrupt. In September there are elections for the Safa presidency. At that time, I've spoken to Kirsten. Kirsten on Friday said he will be standing. He told me personally, I'll be standing. Danny Jordan will be standing. Irving Koza will be there or thereabouts. If he doesn't stand for president, he'll be in a position where he's in control of the guy that's going for it, maybe Kirsten. So we're looking at a situation in September where this country has to decide on the future of football. Do we stay the way we are with corruption, bribing of officials, and a terrible situation where our Bafana are just starting to improve, and we might not be able to pay them next month, and that's why they're trying to organise friendlies with Spain and link-ups with Juventus. It's a dreadful situation. All we can hope, Jeremy, just very briefly, is that the match-fixing inquiry purely limited to match fixing, a judicial review of the match fixing before the World Cup will bring down certain people in Safa that we could do without, because that's where the corruption lies. The match fixers, the people that spend all this money, they need to be wiped out of Safa.
Who controls and signs off on that amount of money?
There are 7 different trustees that sign off on this. One of them is Jerome Falca, who's now a South African citizen. He will actually have to come here and help sign whenever they have a group of people like women's football. Today they launched 2 junior leagues. Yep. They want to build something Bronkhorstspruit or build something in the rural areas for football, not involving the PSL, not involving Chiefs or Swallows or Sundowns. Then they have to all get together, these 7 trustees, agree on the spend, and they have agreed on about 58 million. And then it will come through, I think it's Ernst & Young.
So the checks and balances are there, but is there a long-term plan to spend this amount of money, or is it simply going to sit in a bank account and gather interest?
Well, that's a good question. There's no long-term plan, but as all the applications come in for money, as people get aware that this 472 million is sitting there, people will come in and say, oh, can we have a little bit of that to set up a junior football club in, somewhere like Mpumalanga, and can we then make sure it's spent properly? There's slight rumours that I'm getting now that some of the money has been given to the wrong people, but there's checks and balances in place. I'm not worried. This 472 million is in the right place. It's doing the right thing, and there's people like Jerome Falca that will sign it off, and there's a financial institution in charge of, it doesn't even come from Safa. But I do know that Safa want to get their hands on this money because that's their salvation, because their sponsors are running, the match-fixing allegations are about to break, and people will be brought down. Unless this money can be brought to bear, Safa are in big trouble, and Bafana are in big trouble. And I just hope that Bafana can play through this and get through their neutral game against the Central African Republic and then beat Ethiopia away. We then go to Brazil to a World Cup. But who will fund that if Safa's bank account is kind of a third of the size of their wage bill? Right. That's the problem.
Controversial issue, and lots to come on that. Neal Collins, independent soccer analyst, with us here on Newsnight.
News that moves. eNCA.com.